My ex used me to pay for her dream apartment, then dumped me for a rich guy, so I took legal action and left her regretful and powerless. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I thought I'd finally found someone I could trust completely. Was Chloe, and from the moment I met her, she had this way of lighting up a room, not in a flashy, attention-seeking way, but in a quiet, magnetic way that made everyone around her feel seen. She was charming, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in me. I remember thinking, finally, someone who gets me, someone who actually listens. It felt like the universe had handed me this perfect little miracle wrapped in a smile. Our early days together were intoxicating. Late-night walks where we'd talk about everything from childhood dreams to our ideal future apartments. We'd sit in coffee shops until closing, planning vacations we couldn't afford yet, joking about our future empire like it was already ours. Dates were simple, but meaningful, sharing a slice of pizza, getting ice cream from a corner shop, laughing until our cheeks hurt. I found myself falling in deeper every single day. I wanted to support her, so I started picking up small bills, covering dinners, sometimes even helping with her gas money when she was short. Nothing extravagant at first, just little things I could manage, but it felt good. Felt like we were building something together. And she would always thank me with that soft, almost shy smile, resting her hand on mine, whispering, "I don't know what I'd do without you." It made me feel needed, valued, like this was more than just a relationship. It was a partnership. But even in those early days, there were subtle hints, tiny glimpses of a different side. Chloe would casually mention her expensive tastes, describing her dream apartment downtown, the marble countertops, the balcony with city views. She framed it as harmless ambition, joking, "One day I'll have this place, and we'll live like kings and queens." I laughed it off, thinking it was just dream talk. I wanted to believe in those dreams as much as she did, even if it was beyond my means. I was completely invested emotionally, mentally, and even financially. I had no idea that those small acts of trust and generosity were quietly setting the stage for something I could never have imagined. And in the back of my mind, there was this faint, unshakable feeling that Chloe's ambitions might one day reach far beyond what I could keep up with. As the months went by, I found myself falling even deeper for Chloe. It wasn't just the laughter or the shared jokes. It was the way she made me feel like my small gestures mattered. Every time I paid for a dinner or helped her with gas money, she'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "You're amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you." It felt like love in its purest form, and I started imagining a future that revolved entirely around her. Weekends became little adventures, flea markets, picnics, late-night movies on the couch. Everything seemed perfect, and I was completely blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface. Chloe began hinting more frequently about her dream apartment. At first it was innocent. I'd love a place with a balcony that overlooks the skyline just for the sunsets. I would smile and nod, picturing the two of us there one day. But slowly, those dreams started sounding more urgent, more tangible. She would casually drop comments about high-end appliances, modern furniture, and neighborhoods far beyond what I could ever afford. She framed it as excitement for our future. But there was something in the way she said it that tugged at me, a subtle expectation that I would help somehow, without even asking. I remember one evening, sitting on her couch, sipping cheap wine, and she leaned in close. "Imagine if we could just take the leap and make it happen. I've been saving, but, a little help could get us there faster." Her eyes were hopeful, almost pleading, and I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to be the person who made her dreams come true. I wanted to prove my worth, my devotion. I agreed without hesitation, masking my nervousness as excitement. Friends started noticing little things. "Man, she talks a lot about expensive stuff, doesn't she?" They'd say. I'd laugh nervously. "Yeah, but she's just dreaming. It's cute." I'd respond, convincing myself I was just supportive, that this was normal in a relationship. Deep down, though, there was a flicker of doubt, a whisper telling me to slow down, to be careful. I ignored it. Every little investment I made, every favor, every small financial sacrifice only pulled me closer. I was completely entangled, emotionally and financially. And I had no idea how far Chloe's ambition would stretch or how much it would eventually cost me. And then, things started to change. It started small, almost imperceptible at first. Chloe would tell little half-truths about work, errands, or her plans, and I'd catch the tiniest inconsistencies. Like the time she said she had a meeting across town, but ran into a mutual friend downtown, looking perfectly composed. When I asked, she laughed it off. "Oh, I just swung by. Didn't want to bother you." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. It hurt too much to imagine she could be anything less than honest. Then came the texts. I'd glance at her phone. Lying on the counter, and there it was, a quick laugh, a heart emoji from some guy she said was just a coworker. I pushed it out of my mind. She's harmless. She loves me, I told myself. Still, a quiet knot of doubt grew in my stomach. Even when friends tried to hint, "Man, I think she's playing you a bit," I would defend her. "No way. She's perfect for me," I insisted. Financially, I was more entangled than ever. She casually mentioned, "This apartment deal is perfect, but I'm a little short on the deposit. Would you mind helping me cover it?" My heart leapt both at the thought of making her dreams come true and at the subtle unease crawling in my chest. "Of course," I said, smiling, pretending the money wasn't a worry. She hugged me tight, pressing her cheek to mine, whispering, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." I melted, telling myself I was lucky to be loved like this. But the signs were there. Her casual mentions of wealthy friends, brunches at fancy places I couldn't afford, and little vacations she treated herself to started to feel less like ambition and more like expectation. I noticed her laughter was different with those people, lighter, easier, like I wasn't even in the room sometimes. My gut told me something wasn't right, but I buried it under love, trust, and denial. That evening, she sat on the couch, scrolling through listings. "One of these could be ours." "Just imagine it," she said dreamily. Nodded, my hand brushing. Hers unaware that the apartment she wanted was becoming a trap I didn't yet see. I had no idea that this small financial involvement, meant as support and love, was slowly opening a door I could never close. And then came the day she dropped the first hint that everything was about to change. It was a rainy Thursday when Chloe brought up the apartment again, but this time her tone carried something heavier, like urgency disguised as excitement. "I found it. The one I've been dreaming about. Downtown, with the balcony, modern appliances, everything," she said, eyes sparkling. I could barely breathe. My mind raced. This was it, the chance to really build something together, to make our dreams real. My heart told me yes before my brain even had a chance to protest. I asked about the cost. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I've saved a bit, but I'm still short on the deposit. Maybe you could help me?" My stomach twisted, but I smiled. Of course I could help. I wanted to help. I wanted to feel like I was giving us a future, proving my devotion in tangible ways. I didn't stop to think about the amount, about what it meant for me financially. I only saw Chloe beaming at me, imagining the life we could have. Signing the papers, transferring funds, it all felt surreal. I was so caught up in the excitement that I barely noticed her nervous glances when her phone buzzed. She laughed it off every time I looked, saying, "Just work stuff, don't worry." But the knot in my stomach tightened. Something about the ease with which she accepted my help felt off. That weekend, we spent hours furnishing the apartment in our minds, planning future date nights, imagining Sunday mornings, sipping coffee on the balcony. I could almost smell the fresh paint, hear the city hum below us. Every fantasy felt so real, so close, and I wanted to believe that I was building something permanent. Friends tried to warn me. "Man, don't get too deep into this financially, you know how she is," one said over a beer. I laughed nervously. "Nah, she's different. She actually cares." But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, and no amount of denial could completely erase it. That night, as I lay in bed, I caught a glimpse of her phone buzzing with messages I wasn't meant to see. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my trust, my generosity, was about to be tested in ways I couldn't imagine. And soon enough, it would be tested. In the most brutal way possible. It started with little things I should have noticed but didn't. Chloe's laughter seemed lighter around certain people. She'd check her phone constantly, hiding it whenever I walked into the room. I asked once, "Who's texting you?" She smiled, that perfect, calming smile that always made me trust her. "Just work stuff, babe. Don't worry about it." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Then came the weekends. She'd mentioned meeting friends for brunch or cocktails, always vague about who exactly. I noticed her spending on fancy coffee and lunches that didn't include me. When I jokingly asked, "Are you becoming a regular at some hip cafe without me?" she laughed it off. "Just networking, love." Nothing serious? My chest tightened, but I suppressed it, telling myself it was normal for ambitious people to have their own social lives. I started seeing it creep into our finances. Little by little, Chloe's tastes were demanding more. She talked about upgrading the furniture, adding decor that was way over our budget, and insisted I help with some of the costs. "It's for us," she'd say, her eyes wide, sincere. And I'd give in every time, not realizing I was being manipulated. I wanted to provide to show her that my love meant something. I could make our dreams real. Then came the whisper of suspicion from a friend. I saw Chloe at that new luxury cafe. With some guy in a suit? She looked happy. I froze. My stomach dropped. I asked her about it, expecting a laugh, a simple explanation. But she shrugged. "You worry too much. He's just a friend." I wanted to believe her, but doubt began gnawing at me, quietly, painfully. That night, sitting on the couch, watched her scroll through apartment listings again. "One of these could be ours. So close, I can feel it," she said dreamily. My hand brushed hers, and I tried to shake off the unease. But the seed had been planted, the first real hint that my trust, my generosity, and my heart might not be safe. I had no idea that this subtle betrayal was just the beginning. Something far worse was waiting, lurking behind her charming smile. I remembered the day like it was yesterday. Chloe came over, her smile a little too tight, her eyes avoiding mine. I had no idea what was coming, but a part of me, some tiny, anxious part, felt the shift in the air. "We need to talk," she said softly, almost hesitantly, as if preparing herself more than me. My stomach sank, but I tried to stay calm. "Sure, what's up?" I asked, forcing a casual tone, hoping it was nothing serious. Then she said it. I met someone, and I think I want to be with him instead." The words hit me like a truck. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, and the room spun around me. "Wait, what do you mean we? We've been building this life." My voice cracked, disbelief bleeding through every syllable. She avoided my eyes. "I'm sorry. He can give me things you can't. The apartment, the lifestyle. I just can't anymore. Everything I had worked for, the late nights, the small sacrifices, the emotional and financial support felt like a cruel joke." My hands shook as I realized she had used me, my generosity, my trust, to secure her dream life. And now I was nothing more than a stepping stone. I could feel my heart shatter in slow motion. I sat there numb, the apartment deposit, the dinners, the trips we'd planned, all of it taunting me. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. You used me," I finally whispered, the pain raw and guttural. She didn't answer, just looked down, as if ashamed or maybe as if she didn't care at all. The emotional low was crushing. I felt powerless, humiliated, and manipulated all at once. For the first time in months, I questioned my own judgment. I had loved her completely, invested every ounce of my trust and resources, and it had been thrown back in my face. And yet amid the heartbreak, a spark flickered on Gore. A realization that maybe, just maybe, I could do something. Something that would make her regret thinking she could get away with it, because what she didn't know was that this story wasn't over. After the breakup, I felt hollow. Every corner of our apartment, every object, every memory seemed taunting now. But amid the crushing disappointment, a sense of resolve started to grow. I couldn't undo the past, but I could reclaim my power. I realized that Chloe's ambitions had been fueled by my generosity, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The first step was gathering evidence. I started with financial records, bank statements showing transfers. receipts from deposits, and shared expenses she'd claimed as ours. Every little payment became proof of her deception. Then came the messages. Texts, emails, screenshots of conversations where she had promised things she had no intention of keeping. Each one made my stomach churn, but also strengthened my resolve. I remember sitting at my desk late one night, papers spread out everywhere, my hands trembling as I organized everything chronologically. The apartment deposit, the dinners, the little loans all added up to a picture she couldn't deny. The weight of betrayal still pressed down, but this time I felt a flicker of control. I wasn't helpless anymore, friends became my sounding board. You're doing the right thing, man. Don't let her get away with this, one said. Another offered advice about finding a lawyer who specialized in fraud and financial exploitation. I listened, nodded, and felt hope bubble up alongside the anger. The fear of confrontation remained. The anger was sharper. Every time I thought about her luxurious new life, a pang of bitterness hit me, but it fueled my focus. I pictured her oblivious to the storm that was quietly forming behind her back. My quiet determination became my shield. I knew I had to be meticulous, patient, thorough, and as I prepared for the legal battle that was about to begin, a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation kept me awake. Chloe thought she had won, that her life was set, and I was heartbroken, but she had no idea that her reckoning was just around the corner. The day I walked into the lawyer's office, my hands were shaking, and my heart was a mix of fear and determination. I laid everything out. Bank transfers, receipts, messages, promises broken. The lawyer, a calm, middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, leaned back and said, "You have a solid case. She won't see this coming." I felt a strange surge of hope like, for the first time in months, I had an edge. Chloe had no idea. While she was living her high-rise dream, I was quietly building a case that could turn her life upside down. The process wasn't easy: mails, paperwork, tracking transactions, but with each piece of evidence, the weight of betrayal lessened, replaced by purpose. Friends checked in constantly, some shaking their heads at the thought of taking legal action, others cheering me on. "She won't know what hit her," one joked, but I didn't see it as revenge yet. I saw it as justice. The first court date arrived, and I felt my chest tighten as I entered the building. Chloe was there naturally, acting composed and cool, unaware of the storm about to hit. The lawyer guided me through the proceedings, explaining every step. Depositions, evidence review, cross-examinations. It was intense, exhausting. But I clung to the thought that this was my chance to reclaim what was taken from me. During one session, Chloe tried to downplay the transactions. Shrugging, he gave me the money willingly. It was a gift, she claimed. My lawyer shot back with undeniable proof. Bank transfers labeled for the apartment deposit, screenshots showing promises tied to shared plans, receipts for furniture and utilities she insisted I pay. I watched her smile falter slightly, and I felt a rush of satisfaction. Mingled with the lingering sting of betrayal, every hearing made her shift uncomfortably, each piece of evidence cornering her further. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but for the first time, I felt powerful. The heartbreak had fueled my focus, and now, I was finally reclaiming the life and respect she had tried to strip from me. And even as the case dragged on, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Chloe was about to realize that the consequences of her actions were far bigger than she had ever imagined. Even with the legal battle underway, the emotional toll was brutal. Every time I left the courthouse, I felt hollow, drained, like the fight was sucking the life out of me. Friends would check in, asking if I was holding up, and I'd put on a brave face, but inside I felt battered. Chloe's life, in contrast, seemed untouched. She was still posting pictures of her new apartment, brunches with her rich boyfriend, a life I had helped fund. The contrast was unbearable. One night, after a long day of hearings, sat alone in my apartment, staring at the glow of my laptop. Every memory of us, every laugh, every shared dream, every act of trust and generosity came flooding back, and with it, the bitter realization that I had been so completely used. I felt humiliated, powerless, and crushed. Was I really that blind? I whispered to myself, voice barely audible in the empty room. My hands shook, and tears burned behind my eyes. I had invested everything emotionally and financially, and it had all been twisted against me. The media I had been using for evidence, the screenshots, the bank statements suddenly felt like cruel reminders rather than tools of justice. I questioned whether the fight was worth it. I imagined walking away, letting Chloe live her dream while I picked up the pieces alone. The thought of surrendering, of letting her triumph over me, made my chest tighten even more. I was exhausted, defeated in spirit even as I was technically still fighting. Then came a subtle, almost cruel realization. She didn't even seem to care that I was hurting. She had moved on emotionally, mentally. Financially, while I was left grappling with a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I had experienced before. That night, curled up on my couch, I hit my rock bottom. I felt completely powerless, humiliated, and emotionally raw. But even in that darkness, a tiny spark of resolve survived, a whisper telling me that this wasn't over. That the fight for justice, for redemption, for reclaiming my dignity, was just beginning. The day the court ruled in my favor was surreal. Chloe walked in, confident and smug, completely unaware of what was about to happen. My lawyer leaned over, whispering, "Everything's in your favor. They can't deny the evidence." I felt a strange mix of relief, adrenaline, and lingering anger as the judge began reading the verdict. Every transaction I had documented, every message she had sent, every little light, all counted. When the ruling was announced, Chloe's face went pale. The court ordered her to return the money I had invested in her apartment and other expenses, along with additional damages for the emotional manipulation I had endured. I watched her fidget in her seat, her carefully constructed image of control unraveling piece by piece. I felt a surge of vindication, a wave of empowerment flooding through me. For the first time in months, I wasn't just the victim, I was in control. Outside the courthouse, Chloe avoided my gaze entirely. Friends who had supported me cheered quietly from a distance, and I realized how heavy the weight of betrayal had been in, how liberating justice felt. I didn't feel gloating joy. It was a calm, steady satisfaction. I had fought for my dignity and won, as we left. Chloe muttered something about the unfairness of it all, but her words fell flat. I didn't need to respond. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and she knew it. I felt lighter than I had in months. The anger and heartbreak finally balanced by closure that night. I walked past my old apartment, the city lights reflecting off the windows. I could finally imagine a future not tied to someone who had used me. I felt a strange, almost cinematic sense of liberation. Like the world had been paused and then set back into motion on my terms. But as satisfying as the victory was, the real payoff wasn't the money or the court ruling. It was the knowledge that Chloe, the woman who had betrayed my trust, was now powerless. She had lost control, and I had reclaimed my life. Yet even in that triumph, a quiet question lingered in my mind. A week after the ruling, I saw Chloe one last time. She approached hesitantly, eyes darting. The confident aura she carried before now replaced with something fragile, almost pleading. I didn't mean for it to get this far," she muttered, voice barely audible. I studied her carefully. Every little smirk, every casual glance she had used to manipulate me was gone. In its place was vulnerability, regret she couldn't mask. I took a deep breath and said nothing at first, letting the silence stretch. Then I finally spoke calmly. "You used me. You lied to me. And now, this is the consequence of your choices." Her jaw tightened, and she opened her mouth to protest, but I shook my head slightly. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to move on. And you've lost the control you thought you had." Seeing her flinch, realizing that her carefully curated world had collapsed, gave me a quiet satisfaction, but it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. I thought about all the nights I had spent, anxious, heartbroken, obsessing over every detail, and realized how much stronger I had become. The fight had been painful, but it had reshaped me into someone who would never be used so easily again. We parted ways without another word. As I walked away, the city noise filled my ears, the air crisp with the sense of liberation. For the first time in months, I felt light, unburdened, like a chapter that had haunted me was finally closed. I reflected on how betrayal, pain, and heartbreak can sometimes be twisted into tools for growth. I realized that my focus had shifted, not on her punishment, not on the money, but on my own empowerment. I had regained control over my life, my finances, and my emotional well-being. That day, I understood the real victory, reclaiming dignity after being manipulated, recognizing that no one can dictate your worth but yourself. And even as I felt that deep sense of closure, I knew that the final chapter, moving forward and embracing the life I deserved, was just beginning. The weeks after the court ruling were strangely peaceful. I moved into a small apartment of my own. Nothing extravagant, but it was mindfully earned, fully independent. For the first time in months, I felt free. Free from manipulation, free from the constant weight of betrayal, and free to rebuild my life on my terms. The sense of empowerment I felt was almost intoxicating, a mix of relief, pride, and quiet triumph. I began to focus on myself, reconnecting with friends I had neglected, picking up hobbies I had abandoned, and finally saving money with no strings attached. Every small accomplishment, every step forward, felt like reclaiming pieces of myself that had been overshadowed by Chloe's deception. I was learning, slowly but surely, that boundaries are not just lines you draw, they are shields that protect your heart, your trust, and your future. Looking back, I realized how much I had grown. The heartbreak that had once crushed me had transformed into resilience. I knew I would never allow someone to exploit my generosity or take advantage of my trust again. And while Chloe continued with her life, her luxury apartment, her wealthy boyfriend no longer cared. I had something she would never have: the knowledge that I had survived, fought back, and emerged stronger. One quiet evening, as I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, the city lights twinkling below, I reflected on the entire journey. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the legal battle, it had all been part of the process of reclaiming myself. I felt a deep sense of closure, a calm I hadn't known in years. Chloe's regret was no longer my burden. My power, my independence, and my peace were. I smiled softly, knowing that the chapter had ended. Not with vengeance or obsession, but with empowerment, dignity, and the quiet joy of someone who had finally taken back control of their life. And as I watched the city hum around me, I knew one thing for certain: I would never let anyone steal my worth again.